guys. I want to find out about Curly because I heard this story and I want to find out if it's true. Did he have trouble learning his lines?
Well, he was what we called a mentally slow in line.
Moe Howard, the tough leader of the Three Stooges, carried secrets behind his sharp wit and bowl-cut hair. While fans adored the hilarious slapstick trio, Moe's final words painted a darker picture of what really went on, especially concerning his brother Curly. Before his death, Moe finally broke his silence, and what he revealed about Curly wasn't the lighthearted story fans expected. It was painful, raw, and heartbreaking. This hidden truth changes everything we thought we knew about their bond, their struggles, and their legacy. The hidden burden behind Curly's laughter. The Three Stooges were never just another comedy act. They were a cultural storm, an unstoppable force on the big screen whose slapstick routines became etched into American memory. At the heart of that legacy were three strikingly different men: Moe Howard, Larry Fine, and Curly Howard. Moe was the iron-willed leader, famous for his sharp haircut, sharper slaps, and commanding presence. Larry, with his frizzed hair and vacant expression, played the perpetual middleman, caught between Moe's bark and Curly's chaos. But it was Curly, born Jerome Lester Horwitz, who stole the spotlight and, in the process, the hearts of millions. Curly's arrival in the act was never guaranteed. In 1932, when Moe's older brother, Shemp Howard, stepped away from the group, Moe and Larry scrambled to fill the gap. Jerome, Moe's younger brother, wanted the role desperately, but few believed he had what it took. He was shy, soft-spoken, and carried a gentle demeanor that seemed at odds with the wild physical comedy the Stooges thrived on. Determined to prove himself, Jerome went to drastic lengths. He shaved his full head of hair and his mustache, creating the instantly recognizable bald look that gave his comedic persona a jolt of absurdity. The transformation worked. From his first performance, something about Curly clicked. Audiences roared with laughter. Directors quickly adapted, and within months, he was the centerpiece of the act. Moe himself would later admit that his brother was a natural. Curly required little direction, little rehearsal. His most iconic bits, the barking like a dog, the frantic spins, the immortal nyuk, 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 weren't written into scripts. They were born from instinct, impulses that seemed to flow through him in the moment. Filmmakers learned to keep the cameras rolling, never knowing what unscripted brilliance might appear. But Moe saw what audiences never could. Behind the whirlwind of comedy was a fragile man. Off camera, Curly was quiet, almost painfully shy. The spotlight drained him. He avoided interviews, shrank from crowds, and rarely lingered after filming wrapped. His generosity was endless, always kind to fans and crew, but he struggled to form lasting relationships. Short-lived marriages came and went, leaving him more withdrawn. Moe, as both brother and colleague, carried the burden of watching it unfold. As fame pushed the Stooges into grueling schedules, the cracks in Curly's armor began to show. The work was physically punishing. Endless falls, pratfalls, and exaggerated punches repeated take after take. At first, his weariness was easy to dismiss. Everyone blamed stress. But Moe noticed more. Curly's timing faltered. His improvisations, once lightning quick, grew sluggish. He missed cues, forgot lines, and sometimes seemed to wander from the set in confusion. Not angry, but as if unsure where he was meant to be. His weight shifted unpredictably, and his energy dimmed. Even when the studio lights blazed and the crowd howled with laughter, Moe saw something different in his brother's eyes. The spark that once defined him was flickering. In later reflections, Moe confessed that he knew early on something deeper was wrong, but the machine of Hollywood left no room for weakness. Contracts demanded performances, and audiences demanded laughter. Moe tried to shield Curly, to protect him without letting anyone suspect the decline. Yet, with regret heavy in his voice, he would later admit, Curly gave everything he had on camera, and when the cameras stopped, he had nothing left. The warning signs were always there, and Moe never forgave himself for how long they went unnoticed. So how did laughter hide such torment? And why did Moe stay silent? The answer exposes pain behind Curly's legend. Keep watching. When the spotlight became a burden. By the early 1940s, the Three Stooges had reached the height of their fame. Their shorts were played in theaters across America, their routines providing the kind of wild, unfiltered laughter people craved during difficult times. On screen, the trio seemed unstoppable, but off-camera, a different story was quietly unfolding. Beneath the chaos and comedy, Moe watched as his younger brother Curly began to change. Curly was still in his late 30s, yet his body betrayed him as though he were twice that age. The man once known for boundless energy, quick improvisations, and lightning-fast reactions now struggled with the simplest movements. He had developed high blood pressure and was gaining weight at a dangerous pace. At first, the decline was easy to dismiss. A forgotten line here, an extra take there. But by 1942, the warning signs had become impossible to ignore. Moe would later recall how, between takes, Curly often sat slumped in his chair, drenched in sweat, staring vacantly as if the life had drained out of him. The brother who once filled sets with an unpredictable spark now appeared detached, both physically and emotionally. He had always been shy, but now he seemed distant, unreachable. It wasn't just exhaustion, it was as if his body and mind were slipping out of his control. On set, the changes grew painfully obvious. His speech began to slur. His once crisp stunts slowed to a crawl. Simple routines had to be adjusted so that he could stand in place, deliver his lines, and move without collapsing. Behind the laughter, Moe and the crew were forced to quietly rearrange the act around his limitations. Yet, through it all, Curly never complained. He refused to burden others with his struggles. To the fans who adored him, to the studio that depended on him, and above all to Moe and Larry, he felt he owed everything. But Moe knew the truth. His brother wasn't just tired, he was sick. In later years, Moe admitted that Curly was already showing clear signs of suffering multiple strokes. His hands would shake unpredictably. Mid-sentence, his mouth would seize in strange, uncontrollable ways. Each day brought new cracks in the once unshakable performer. Still, the cameras kept rolling. Columbia Pictures had little interest in slowing down production. The war years had made comedy an invaluable escape, and the Three Stooges were guaranteed box office gold. Contracts demanded more shorts, and the studio was unwilling to let a fading star stand in the way of profits. Even when Curly's decline was undeniable, stopping was never an option. The machine had to be fed, and Moe felt powerless to fight it. Curly gave everything he had left, appearing in over 90 shorts during his career, many of them filmed in the very years his health was unraveling. Between 1944 and 1946, his deterioration was at its sharpest, yet the cameras captured only fragments of the struggle. Fans, seated in theaters, still laughed at the antics, unaware that the man on screen was fighting a private battle with his own body. Moe, however, could not look away. Each performance felt less like comedy and more like a sacrifice. In later reflections, he carried the weight of guilt, confessing that his brother gave the last of himself to those films not out of joy, but out of obligation. The audience roared. The studio profited. But behind every spin, every fall, every nyuk, 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 was a man slowly dying in silence. But what hidden truth did Moe's guilt reveal? Sacrifice, exploitation, or love unspoken? And how does it reshape Curly's legacy forever? Stay tuned. Cracks in the comedian's mask. Moe Howard never hid the painful truth about his younger brother. He drank far too much liquor, Moe once admitted, and I knew the reason why. The root of that problem, Moe explained, went back to Curly's youth. As a teenager, he had suffered a gun accident that left him with lingering pain whenever he stood for long periods. Comedy demanded constant movement, pratfalls, and punishing stunts, but away from the camera, that pain never left him. Then there was the matter of appearance. For the act, Curly had shaved off his thick head of hair, a decision that made him a comedic sensation but left him deeply insecure. He felt he no longer had any appeal for the fair sex, Moe confessed. Alcohol became his crutch, a way to mask his shyness, a way to summon courage when he wanted to approach women. Behind his manic screen persona, Curly was the exact opposite. He was an introvert, uncomfortable in crowds, and rarely socialized unless he had been drinking. And as the pressures of Hollywood mounted, his reliance on alcohol grew. His personal life reflected his struggles. On June 7, 1937, he married Elaine Ackerman. A year later, the couple welcomed their daughter, Marilyn, but the marriage dissolved in 1940. After the divorce, Curly spiraled further. His weight ballooned, his blood pressure rose, and the insecurities he carried about his shaved head only deepened. To those who saw only the laughter on screen, Curly was invincible. But Moe, watching from close quarters, knew his brother was unraveling. By January 23, 1945, the decline could no longer be ignored. At Moe's urging, Curly checked himself into Cottage Hospital in Santa Barbara, California. There, the diagnosis was stark: severe hypertension, retinal hemorrhage, and obesity. His health forced him to slow down. That year, he appeared in only 5 shorts, a steep drop from the 6 to 8 films the Stooges typically released annually. Doctors believed he may have already suffered his first mild stroke. For Moe, the truth was agonizing. His brother needed rest, not more work. Moe pleaded with Columbia Pictures' infamous head, Harry Cohn, to give Curly the time he desperately needed. But Cohn, known for his ruthless obsession with profit, refused. Production was not to be halted. The Stooges were too valuable. To Cohn, it didn't matter if the pace of filming killed Curly, as long as the shorts kept filling theaters and Columbia's accounts stayed full. Author Michael Fleming would later call that decision a disastrous course of action. The first short Curly filmed after his stroke was If a Body Meets a Body. Audience noticed something was different. His movements were slower, his timing dulled. He still played the clown, but the spark was dim. In the hands of sympathetic director Edward Burns, adjustments were made. Burns carefully crafted scenes to protect Curly, designing routines that didn't demand as much physical strain, yet allowed him to shine. Films like Microphonies, A Bird in the Head, and Monkey Business revealed a star no longer in his prime, but still fighting to perform. On set, Moe often coached him through lines, whispering cues and guiding his gestures, a heartbreaking shift for a man who once thrived on raw improvisation. Other directors, such as Jules White, took a harsher approach. Shorts like Uncivil War Birds and Beer Barrel Polecats shifted focus away from Curly, relying more heavily on Moe and Larry. For fans, the change felt subtle, perhaps a dip in chemistry, perhaps a scene that lacked Curly's usual energy. But for those close to him, it was unmistakable. Curly was suffering, and every day in front of the camera pushed him further into decline. So how did one sudden stroke steal Curly's laughter forever? And what devastating truth was Moe forced to reveal next? The stroke that stole the laughter. By 1946, the decline could no longer be masked. The signs had been mounting for years: slurred words, shaking hands, forgotten lines, but no one truly expected how abruptly everything would collapse. On May 6th, during the filming of Half-Wit's Holiday, the unimaginable struck. In front of the cameras, Curly Howard, the comic genius who had once seemed unstoppable, fell to the floor, felled by a massive stroke. He was only 42. Moe Howard was there that day, and the memory haunted him for the rest of his life. In later interviews, Moe described the moment not as the day his brother's body failed, but as the day Curly's spirit died. The Curly the world adored, the whirlwind who spun across sets, barked like a dog, and could ignite laughter with a glance, was gone in an instant. The stroke left him partially paralyzed, his speech broken, his movements unsteady, and his emotions unpredictable. For a man who built his career on boundless energy and flawless timing, the cruelty was unbearable. He could no longer perform, and with that, he lost the role that had defined him, both to the world and to himself. The devastation hit Moe harder than anyone. Curly was not only his co-star, not only the centerpiece of the Stooges' success, He was his younger brother. Moe had spent years watching the warning signs pile up, watching Curly push his body far beyond its limits, and now he had to live with the consequences. But in Hollywood, there was no pause for grief. Columbia Pictures demanded the show continue. Contracts, profits, and audience demand carried more weight than human suffering. To fill the gap, the studio turned back to Moe Howard, Moe and Curly's older brother, who had left the act in 1932. Shemp returned in Curly's place, and while he brought his own brand of nervous, awkward humor, the chemistry was never the same. Even Moe admitted it. Shemp could be funny, but he wasn't Curly. Audiences felt the shift immediately. The unpredictable, larger-than-life spark that Curly brought could not be replicated. The soul of the Stooges had been dimmed. Meanwhile, Curly's life away from the cameras grew increasingly tragic. The stroke had robbed him of independence, and his condition continued to deteriorate. More strokes followed, each one stripping away another piece of the man who had once been a symbol of laughter. He was shuttled between hospitals and care facilities, and as his physical health declined, his mental state fractured. Reports spoke of his stays in mental institutions, where memory lapses and bursts of confusion left him unrecognizable even to those who had known him best. There were moments of fragile hope. In 1949, Curly made a brief cameo in Malice in the Palace, a fleeting glimpse of the man audiences had loved. But even in those few seconds, the difference was impossible to ignore. The timing was gone, the spark absent. What remained was a shadow of the vibrant performer the world had adored. Moe carried on with the Stooges, keeping the troupe alive through sheer determination. But every slapstick gag, every exaggerated fall, every poke to the eye carried a hidden weight. Behind the laughter, there was a grief Moe rarely allowed himself to speak of. It wasn't until his final years that he finally opened up, breaking his silence to reveal the full measure of Curly's suffering, the warning signs ignored, and the crushing guilt he carried. Because Curly's collapse wasn't simply the story of a man undone by illness, it was the story of a tragedy foreseen but unheeded, one that destroyed not only a career, but a life. But how did a tragedy everyone saw coming still go unanswered? And why was the silence chosen over truth now haunting history forever? Stay right here. A life unraveling in silence. When Curly Howard was forced to step away from the Three Stooges in 1946, after his massive stroke, the public clung to a hopeful illusion. Most fans believed their beloved clown was simply resting, recovering, and preparing for a triumphant return to the stage. But behind closed doors, the truth was far more devastating. The man who had once been the heartbeat of comedy was quietly unraveling, his body failing him, his mind breaking piece by piece, while the world looked the other way. Moe later revealed how deeply Curly struggled in those early months. Though paralyzed on one side and robbed of the coordination that had defined his comedy, Curly could not accept that his career was over. He would cry out to Moe, asking when he could return to the act, pleading to believe he was only on pause. Moe admitted that everyone around him knew the harsh reality. Curly would never step onto a set again. Yet, his brother's hope, though heartbreaking, refused to die, even as his strength did. The stroke had not only stripped him of his physical power, but had also shaken the very core of his mind. Curly became paranoid, suspicious even of those who loved him most. Depression took hold, deep and suffocating, and with it came destructive habits. His weight soared, his energy collapsed, and his once magnetic personality dimmed into sadness and frustration. The man who had once spun in circles, barked like a dog, and turned chaos into joy, now struggled to recognize the life he once lived. Moe remained loyal, not simply as a fellow stooge, but as a brother who could not abandon him. Yet even he admitted that many visits left him shaken. Looking at Curly was like staring at a stranger wearing his brother's eyes. Every flicker of recognition, every faint smile felt like a miracle. But each passing week made those flickers rarer. Curly's personal life, already turbulent, fell into deeper disarray. He had been married 4 times, but relationships crumbled under the strain of his illness and emotional instability. At times, he could be tender, almost childlike in his sweetness. At others, confusion and bursts of anger would erupt without warning. The instability grew so severe that Curly was eventually institutionalized, with doctors insisting he needed long-term care for both body and mind. In the late 1940s and early 1950s, medical treatment for such conditions offered little comfort. His days became a monotonous rhythm of hospital walls, medications, and caretakers. Through it all, the fans who adored him remained largely unaware. On screen, Moe and Larry pressed forward with the act, carrying the torch of the Stooges' laughter. But in private, Moe admitted he and Larry felt helpless. They were comedians, not doctors, powerless to stop the slow erasure of the man who had once carried their act with boundless vitality. By the early 1950s, the decline was undeniable. Multiple strokes followed, each one stealing another part of Curly. Speech became nearly impossible, and walking unaided was a distant memory. Confusion clouded his thoughts, leaving him fragile and detached from reality. The great showman, who had once commanded stages with larger-than-life antics, could barely hold on to fragments of himself. Yet, even as the end drew near, one small light remained. Whenever Moe visited, Curly would still smile, however faintly. It was a fragile reminder that somewhere inside the broken body and fading mind, the spirit of a man who lived to bring laughter still flickered. But as the years crept forward, even that light was dimming, leading inexorably toward the moment that would end Curly's long and private suffering in January. And how did Moe confront Curly's fading light? Was it love, regret, or unbearable guilt shaping his silence all along? Keep watching. The hidden truth behind the laughter. As the 1940s gave way to the 1950s, the laughter of the Three Stooges continued to echo across movie theaters. Their short films rolled out like clockwork, bringing joy to millions who counted on the trio's brand of chaos and slapstick to brighten their days. Yet behind the laughter, a silent question lingered. Fans wrote letters by the thousands, each one carrying the same plea. When will Curly be back? Why hasn't Curly been in the new films? The answer was devastating, but the world wasn't allowed to hear it. The studio, fiercely protective of its brand, refused to let tragedy stain the image of the Stooges. They were a comedy machine, a dependable source of laughter, and the notion of one of its brightest stars collapsing in illness didn't fit the story Hollywood wanted to tell. So the truth was buried, hidden behind carefully chosen words and half-smiles. Moe, ever the leader and the steady hand of the group, carried this burden alone. He became the spokesperson, the one who soothed fans with simple reassurances. "Curly's just resting," he would say with a grin, or "he needed some time off." They were lies, but they were lies told out of love, crafted to protect his younger brother's dignity. What no one saw was what happened after the cameras stopped rolling. Moe breaking down in private, crushed by the reality that he was watching his brother fade away in slow motion. It was a torment few could imagine. On one side, Moe had to keep the Stooges alive, leading the team, keeping the work going, and ensuring the jobs of everyone who depended on them. On the other hand, he was grieving a loss the public didn't even know was happening. His silence wasn't just a strategy, it was survival. But years later, Moe admitted that the guilt of hiding the truth never left him. He confessed that he often felt he had failed Curly, not because of neglect, but because he had been forced to make an impossible choice: to tell the world the depth of Curly's suffering, or to preserve his brother's memory as the joyous figure audiences adored. He chose silence. Even after Curly's death in January 1952, Moe said nothing. He let the world keep its image of Curly, the wild-eyed, boundless comic whose very presence could turn a scene into chaos. There were no public confessions, no long interviews to set the record straight. The silence continued, even as reruns of the Stooges filled television screens and new generations laughed at Curly's antics, never knowing the man behind the act had lived his final years in pain and decline. But time has a way of reshaping perspective. As Moe grew older, and his own health began to weaken in the early 1970s, he realized the cost of silence. He had seen how easily the world remembered Curly as only a clown, not as the generous, loving, deeply human man he had been. Moe no longer wanted that false image to be the final word. For decades, he had shielded the truth to protect his brother. Now, as his own life neared its end, he chose to reveal it, not for fame, not for pity, but for peace. But what secret was so heavy, so haunting, that Moe waited until his dying breath to reveal it? Truth or torment? This truth is far from over. The confession that couldn't stay buried. In the final week of his life, Moe Howard could no longer carry the silence he had guarded for decades. He agreed to one last interview, but what came from his lips was not nostalgia or rehearsed anecdotes. It was raw, unfiltered, and painfully human, less a recollection than a confession. For fans who had cherished Curly as the playful, unstoppable force of comedy, Moe's words were almost too heavy to bear. "I should have said something sooner," he admitted, his voice breaking under the weight of regret. For most of his career, Moe had shielded the image of the Three Stooges. He knew the world adored Curly for his boundless energy, his innocence, his ability to light up a screen with a single look. But Moe now revealed what he could no longer bury. Curly was not the man the audience thought they knew. Behind the manic laughter, Curly was lonely, overwhelmed, and fragile. While millions roared with joy at his on-screen antics, he was slipping further into confusion, depression, and illness. The public had no idea, and Moe, bound by loyalty and fear of breaking the illusion, had helped hide it. That silence, he confessed, had become unbearable in his last days. He revealed that long before the devastating stroke of 1946, warning signs had been there: slurred words, sudden exhaustion, emotional breakdowns when no one was watching. But filming never stopped. "We either showed up or we got replaced," Moe explained bitterly. Columbia Pictures, the studio behind the Stooges, cared little for the men's health. The films were cheap, popular, and profitable. Compassion had no place in the schedule, so the three brothers worked endlessly, churning out shorts month after month, each filled with punishing stunts. Even as Curly's body betrayed him, he was expected to throw pies, tumble down staircases, and endure physical abuse for laughs. He was having strokes, and they still had him doing pratfalls, Moe said, his voice cracking with anguish. Injuries and bruises became routine, while Curly's strength drained away. Moe admitted his own guilt. As the leader of the group, he often pushed Curly forward, believing it was the only way to keep their act alive and protect their livelihoods. But privately, he watched his brother crumble. "We were making people laugh while my brother was dying in front of me," Moe whispered. Those words cut deeper than any slapstick gag ever could. For years, fans thought Curly had simply stepped away, that illness had quietly ended his career. But Moe's confession stripped away the myth. Curly hadn't just faded. He had been worked past his breaking point, denied the help he desperately needed, and left to fight a losing battle in silence. Moe offered no excuses, only truth, and the truth was crushing. His final fear was not of death, but of legacy, that people would remember Curly only as the clown, and never as the man. And what hidden burden haunted him most, legacy or love? Moe revealed only the truth, no excuses. The goodbye that never faded. Moe Howard never forgot the last time he looked into his younger brother's eyes. By then, the wild spark that had once made Curly the beating heart of the Three Stooges had been extinguished. His once lively frame was now frail, his body pinned to a hospital bed, his gaze unfocused, as though the world had slipped away from him. Words no longer came easily, but in that silence, something deeper was said. "He held my hand tight," Moe recalled, his voice heavy with memory. In that grip, without a single word spoken, Moe felt his brother's final goodbye. That moment stayed with him forever. Walking out of the room, Moe broke down in tears, crushed by guilt and helplessness. There was so much he wished he had done differently, so much he wished he had said before time ran out. Just days later, On January 18, 1952, Jerome "Curly" Howard was gone. He was only 48. The news hit fans like a thunderbolt. To the public, Curly had always been the manic, unstoppable engine of laughter. Few knew how sick he had been, how his body and mind had been deteriorating for years while the show went on. The studio and Moe himself had maintained the illusion. Curly was only resting, they told the world. So when his death was announced, the shock was immense. Letters poured in, tributes were shared, and audiences mourned the man who had made them laugh until they cried. But Moe's grief went far deeper. Off stage, he was hollowed out by sorrow and regret. Still, the machine of comedy demanded momentum. The Stooges continued, first with Shemp, later with Joe Besser, then Curly, Joe DeRita. Moe kept smiling, barking orders in character, carrying the act forward. Yet in private, the loss weighed on him, a burden he carried quietly for decades. Only in the early 1970s, when Moe's own health began to fail, did his silence finally crack. Diagnosed with lung cancer and aware his days were numbered, he began to speak openly, not only about Curly's genius, but about his suffering. He told young performers not to make the same mistake. Never trade your health and humanity for applause. Hollywood, he warned, could devour its brightest talents and discard them without mercy. To Moe, Curly was never just the clown fans adored. He was a man, his brother, who needed help and didn't get it soon enough. On May 4th, 1975, Moe Howard died at the age of 77. Surrounded by family, he carried one truth with him to the very end. He didn't want Curly remembered only for laughter. He wanted the world to know the pain behind the punchlines. So, what do you think Moe's final words about Curly truly revealed? Guilt, love, or a warning to us all? We'd like to hear your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.